Picture this. The HOA president lost her mind at my ranch-style BBQ, calling the cops on, get this, 50 cops. She stormed my Texas smoker, kicking hay bales and brandishing her pink clipboard like a wild weapon, shrieking, "This is not a ranch, shut it down," all while live-streaming the chaos. What she didn't realize? Every guest at my picnic was law enforcement, part of my sheriff family reunion, badges gleaming from 3 states. "Arrest these criminals!" she yelled into her phone at dispatch, her meltdown exploding across the internet as 50 cops stood by, jaws dropped. One woman versus an entire police dynasty. This got messy fast. Drop a cowboy emoji and tell me where you're watching from. You won't believe how this ends. I woke up that morning at 6, feeling on top of the world. The sun was already kissing my 2-acre ranch, smack in the heart of Willowbrook Estates, the poshest HOA community in the county. Now, you might scratch your head wondering why a retired sheriff like me would plant a ranch in the middle of uptight suburbia. Well, after 25 years wearing a badge, I relished the sweet irony of bringing a slice of Wild West to a land of pristine lawns. I slipped on my cowboy boots, genuine rattlesnake skin, and adjusted my Stetson hat, ready for the day. Which city of the United States are you watching from? Drop a comment and share with us if you have any confrontation with the HOA. We will narrate your story on our channel. Headed out to prepare the biggest Texas-style barbecue pit you've ever seen. My 5 horses were already up, grazing peacefully, while my 20 chickens ran around, doing what chickens do best, making a glorious mess. By 8, I had the banner up Morrison family reunion serving since 1976. The hay bales were arranged in a circle for seating, and I'd even set up speakers for some good old country music. Later, my neighbor Mrs. Henderson, an 82-year-old firecracker, peeked over the fence with her morning coffee. "Nathan, that smell is divine, but you know Brenda's going to lose her mind, right?" she said with a mischievous grin. I chuckled and replied, "Let her come, Mrs. H. My chickens are ready for her." She laughed so hard she almost spilled her coffee. "You didn't really train those chickens, did you?" I just winked and went back to seasoning the massive side of beef that would soon be rotating over the fire. At 9 sharp, the first police car rolled up. My best friend from the academy, Carlos Rodriguez, now the current sheriff, stepped out with his wife and kids. "Nathan?" We could smell this from the highway. He boomed, giving me a bear hug that nearly knocked my hat off every 10 minutes after that another 3 to 5 police cars would arrive parking along our quiet suburban street. By 10 there were LAPD cruisers, San Diego PD vehicles, highway patrol motorcycles, and even a few unmarked FBI vehicles. The Morrison family reunion wasn't just any gathering. It was a convention of every cop who'd ever worked with me, been saved by me, or trained under me during my career. That's when Brenda Whitfield woke up. I didn't see it happen, but I can imagine the scene. Her perfectly Botoxed, face contorting in horror as she gazed out her window at the sea of police vehicles. The coffee mug in her manicured hands probably resembled a fountain as she screamed, "Ranch party police cars in my upscale community." Within minutes, she was dressed in her pristine white designer dress, grabbing her infamous pink clipboard with gold lettering, the one she wielded like a weapon at every HOA meeting. She stormed through my ranch gate, her designer heels immediately. Sinking into fresh chicken droppings, the squelch was audible from 20 FT away. "Nathan Morrissey!" she shrieked, waving her clipboard like a battle flag. "Turn this off right now, you're violating 47 HOA regulations." I turned slowly from the grill, giving her my best Clint Eastwood half-smile. "Morning, Brenda, want some barbecue?" I asked, knowing full well it would make her angrier. This isn't Texas. This is Willowbrook Estates. We have civilization." Her voice kept climbing higher with each word, reaching frequencies that made my horses nervous. Carlos stepped forward, still in his sheriff's uniform from his morning shift. "Is there a problem here, ma'am?" he asked, in his official voice, though I could see him fighting back a smile. Brenda's eyes went wide as she finally took in the full scene. This wasn't just Nathan having a small family gathering. The street was lined with police vehicles as far as she could see. Officers in various uniforms were setting up tables, playing with kids, and generally having the time of their lives. She started counting under her breath, her face growing redder with each number. 15, 20, 30. Dear God, there's still more coming. The California Highway Patrol motorcycle roared up just then, as if to prove her point. The officer removed his helmet, waved at me, and called out, "Sorry, I'm late, Chief. Traffic on the 5 was murder." Brenda spun around so fast she almost gave herself whiplash. "Chief, you're all in on this together. This is a conspiracy, a police state invasion of our peaceful community." She fumbled for her phone with shaking hands, nearly dropping her sacred clipboard in the process. "You know what?" she hissed, her eyes blazing with righteous fury. "Let's go live." Brenda's social media live stream started with exactly 100 viewers in the first 30 seconds, mostly her fellow HOA board members and a few confused neighbors. "This is Brenda Whitfield, president of the Willowbrook Estates Home Mainers Association," she announced to her phone camera, which she held at an unflattering angle that emphasized her straining neck. "Look at this, an invasion of corrupt cops in our pristine neighborhood." The camera swung wildly as she tried to capture the scene, showing glimpses of 40-plus police cars and officers cheerfully setting up what looked like the most epic barbecue in California history. The comments started flooding in immediately. "Brenda's lost it again," wrote someone. Team Sheriff posted another. The popcorn emojis multiplied faster than my chickens could lay eggs. I kept my cool, continuing to flip the meat on the grill while occasionally waving at the camera. "Hi, everyone," I called out calmly. "We're just having a family reunion. Everyone's welcome to join us." This seemed to push Brenda over the edge entirely. "Family, this is a gang, a militarized gang occupying our streets," she screeched accidentally, dropping her phone and her theatrical gesturing. The phone landed face up in the grass, still recording, now showing Brenda from the most unfortunate angle possible, right up her nostrils. She didn't notice, too busy ranting at the sky. Christopher Stevens, our HOA vice president, suddenly appeared in frame. "Brenda, calm down, we can handle this," he said. And I caught something interesting. He'd started to say "we" in a different context before catching himself. "Just turn off the live stream. This looks really bad for the HOA," he advised, trying to be the voice of reason. But Brenda was beyond reason. "No, the people need to know the truth," she declared. Still unaware, her phone was on the ground. The viewer count exploded 5,000, 20,000, 50,000, and climbing faster than a rookie climbing the career ladder. Comments were now coming too fast to read. But I caught glimpses. "Is that Louis Vuitton bag fake? Her Botox is uneven. Someone saved the chickens." Brenda, still oblivious to her phone's location, continued her tirade to what she thought was her audience, but was actually just clouds. "These people think they can just waltz into our community with their Texas barbecue and their criminal connections and their complete disregard for property values." That's when the second viral moment happened. Brenda, in her passionate pacing, stepped backward, right into another fresh pile of chicken droppings. This time she slipped completely, her arms windmilling as she tried to maintain balance. The phone camera caught it all in perfect detail. The look of shock, the ungraceful tumble, and the splat as she landed seat first in what my chickens had left behind. The viewer count hit 200,000. Comments exploded with laughing emojis and instant karma messages. Carlo shook his head, trying not to laugh. "Mom, we have all the proper permits for this gathering," he said, helping her up. "Permits? From who? I didn't approve. Anything, I am the supreme authority in Willowbrook Estates," Brenda declared, still not realizing she was now performing for nearly 250,000 viewers with chicken droppings decorating her designer dress. "I decided to throw in a small olive branch just to see what would happen. Brenda, you used to be a reasonable person." "What happened?" I asked quietly. For just a moment something flickered in her eyes. Her phone, still on the ground, caught her glancing at her reflection in a car window, seeing the mess she'd become. But the moment passed quickly. Christopher stepped closer to the phone, and again I noticed something odd. "Mom, maybe we should discuss this inside. The whole internet doesn't need to see." He paused, looking directly at the camera, and I swear I saw him mouth something to someone. Off-screen. Was he communicating with someone? The comments were now speculating wildly. Is that FBI agent behind her? Why does the vice president keep saying, "We weird, this is better than Netflix"? The hashtag Brenda v. Sheriff was trending nationally. Brenda finally noticed her phone on the ground and snatched it up, giving viewers a lovely close-up of grass stains and chicken feathers stuck to her posterior emergency HOA meeting. "Right now," she screamed into the camera, "anyone who doesn't attend will be fined, and I mean everyone." She spun on her soiled heel and marched toward the community center, leaving a trail of feathers and what I can only describe as wounded dignity. The live stream ended with her accidentally hitting the camera flip button, broadcasting her furious makeup-smeared face one last time before cutting off. Behind her, my reunion continued peacefully. More cars kept arriving, including a helicopter that did a low flyby with the pilot waving enthusiastically. Christopher Stevens remained behind for a moment, pulling out his phone and sending what looked like a very urgent text. "This is about to get interesting," Carlos said, standing next to me. "You have no idea," I replied, watching Christopher hurry after Brenda. Something told me our vice president wasn't quite what he seemed, and Brenda was about to find out the hard way that when you declare war on a sheriff's family reunion, you better be prepared for the whole army to show up. The comment that stuck with me from the live stream, though, was simple. Is that FBI agent behind her? Because whoever posted that had noticed something most people missed. Christopher Stevens, our mild-mannered HOA vice president, had a very interesting bulge under his left armpit, the kind of bulge that looked suspiciously like a concealed weapon. And in my 25 years of law enforcement, I'd learned that HOA vice presidents don't usually need to carry guns to community meetings unless, of course, they weren't really HOA vice presidents at all. The Willowbrook Estates Community Center was packed beyond capacity, with people squeezing into every available space, like sardines in a can. The normal capacity of 50 was stretched to nearly 200, with Mrs. Henderson front and center, munching on popcorn she'd brought from home. "This is better than my stories," she announced to anyone who'd listened, offering her snack. Around like we were at a movie theater, the energy in the room was electric, a mixture of anger, curiosity, and barely suppressed laughter from those who'd watched Brenda's viral meltdown. Brenda stood at the podium trying to project authority despite the chicken feathers still clinging to her hair and the obvious stains on her designer dress. She had attempted to clean up, but only succeeded in spreading the mess around. Order in this meeting," she screamed, banging her pink clipboard. On the podium, like a gavel behind her, a PowerPoint presentation titled "Criminal Invasion, a 3 to Us All" flickered on the screen. The first slide showed blurry photos of police cars that looked like they'd been taken by someone having a seizure. The second slide screamed property value in danger in red 72-point font. I sat in the back row calm as a Buddhist monk at meditation, which seemed to infuriate Brenda even more. She kept glancing at me while clicking through slides that made less sense than a chicken trying to solve calculus. But then something beautiful happened. Mrs. Henderson, our octogenarian rebel, slowly stood up, her weathered hands gripping her cane. "Brenda Whitfield," she said, her voice cutting through the room like a knife through butter. 8 years, 8 long years we put up with your nonsense. Enough. The room went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop, or in this case, another chicken feather falling from Brenda's hair. "You fined me $300 because my birds sang too loud in the morning." Birds? Brenda, you tried to find nature. Mrs. Henderson's voice grew stronger with each word, and like dominoes falling, other neighbors started standing up. "He fined me $500 because my grass was half an inch too tall," shouted Robert from Maple Street. "I got fined because my curtains were the wrong shade of beige at a Jennifer from Oak Avenue. My dog barked once $300 fine," yelled Tom from Willow Lane. The meeting was transforming from Brenda's power play into a full-scale revolt. Christopher Stevens stood up, looking uncomfortable. "Actually, I have some data we should review," he said. And there it was again, that verbal slip. He'd started to say "we" in a way that suggested he wasn't talking about the HOA. He pulled out his phone and connected it to the projector, overriding Brenda's ridiculous presentation. What appeared on screen made the entire room gasp. Financial records, detailed ones, showing $200,000 missing from HOA funds over the past 2 years. "Where's the money, Brenda?" Christopher asked quietly, but his voice carried the weight of authority I recognized from my years in law enforcement. Brenda's face went from red to white faster than a traffic light. "Those are investments for the community's future," she sputtered, clutching her clipboard like a life preserver. "Investments in Las Vegas?" Christopher asked. Swiping to the next slide, security footage from various casinos appeared showing Brenda at slot machines, poker tables and roulette wheels. Timestamps showed these visits happened during supposed HOA conference trips. The room erupted. People were shouting, standing on chairs, demanding answers. Brenda looked like a cornered animal, her eyes darting around for an escape route. That's when I finally spoke up from the back. "I didn't want it to come to this, Brenda," I said, my voice cutting through the chaos. Everyone turned to look at me as I stood, slowly, my boots echoing on the linoleum floor as I walked toward the front. "But you've forced everyone's hand. This isn't about my barbecue. This is about years of abuse of power, intimidation, and now, apparently, theft." The room was so quiet you could hear Brenda's labored breathing. She was about to respond when the community center doors burst open. Madison Whitfield entered like an avenging angel in a power suit, her Harvard law degree practically radiating from her confident stride, but her eyes were red, and when she spoke, her voice cracked slightly. "Mom," she said, and that single word carried the weight of years of disappointment. "I think you should stop talking for legal reasons." The room collectively held its breath. Brenda's own daughter, the successful lawyer she bragged about at every opportunity, was here, but clearly not on her mother's side. "Madison, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be in Boston." Brenda's voice had reached a pitch that could shatter glass. Madison's composure finally cracked, tears streaming down her face. "I'm..." here because I'm representing the neighbours, Mom, and because I can't stand by and watch you destroy yourself anymore. This has to stop." The emotional weight in the room was palpable. This wasn't just about HOA violations anymore. This was a family tragedy playing out in real time. You're representing them against your own mother. Brenda's scream was primal, the sound of someone watching their world crumble. "How dare you after everything? I've done for you. I built this community. I maintained standards. I protected property values." Madison shook her head sadly. "No, Mum, you became a tyrant, and everyone knows about the money." The room was riveted. This was better than any reality show. Except it was heartbreakingly real. Christopher cleared his throat and reached into his jacket. The movement was practiced professional. He pulled out a leather wallet and flipped it open. The gold badge gleamed under the fluorescent lights. "FBI," he said simply, "Special Agent Christopher Stevens, Brenda Whitfield. You've been under federal investigation for 14 months. The room exploded again, but Brenda's voice cut through it all as she grabbed the microphone. "If I go down, you all go with me," she screamed, her face contorted with rage. "I know things. I have dirt on every single one of you." Brenda bolted from the meeting like her designer dress was on fire, which, considering the day's events, wouldn't have surprised anyone. She sprinted to the parking lot and jumped into her pink golf cart, the one with HOA, President 1 bedazzled on the sides, and rhinestones that probably cost more than most people's monthly grocery bills. The cart's maximum speed was 15 mph, but Brenda drove it like she was in a Fast and Furious movie. Tires squealing as much as golf cart tires could squeal. Camera phones appeared everywhere. As neighbors poured out of the community center, documenting what would surely become the most viral HOA meltdown in internet history. I watched from the doorway as she careened toward my ranch, determination mixed with desperation on her face. "Oh," I said to Carlos, who appeared beside me. "Think she's coming for round 2? Carlos grinned and pulled out his radio. "All units be advised, chicken protocol is now in effect. I repeat, chicken protocol is engaged." I could hear laughter crackling through the radio responses. You see, the joke about trying to attack chickens wasn't entirely a joke. While I hadn't exactly trained them to attack my chickens, had developed a particular dislike for loud noises and sudden movements, and Brainer was about to provide both in abundance. She crashed through my ranch gate going at least 14 mph, which for a golf cart was practically supersonic. The cart plowed straight into my beautifully arranged salsa table, sending bowls of carefully prepared pico de gallo flying in all directions. Neighbors scattered like bowling pins, though most kept their phones trained on the unfolding disaster. Brenda leaped from the still-moving cart with surprising agility for someone. In a stained designer dress and 3-in heels. "Party's over!" she screamed, making a beeline for my massive BBQ setup. "I'm calling SWAT. I'm calling the National Guard. I'm calling the President." She tried to grab the BBQ grill, apparently forgetting that metal conducting heat from a whole roasting cow might be slightly warm. Her shriek when she touched it probably registered on seismographs 3 counties over. Pivoting with the grace of a drunk elephant, she charged toward the drinks table, flipping coolers and sending ice and beverages cascading across the lawn. That's when my 20 chickens, who'd been peacefully pecking at the ground, decided they'd had quite enough of this disruption. The rooster, a magnificent specimen named Colonel Sanders, yes, I have a sense of humor, let out a war cry that would have made his ancient dinosaur ancestors proud. "Remember Brenda?" I called out, unable to resist. "I told Mrs. Henderson my chickens were ready for you." What happened next was poultry poetry in motion. 20 chickens converged on Brenda like a feathered SWAT team. She spun in circles, arms flailing, as the birds executed what looked like a perfectly choreographed assault. Get away. No chickens allowed in common areas. This is a violation of HOA Code 17(5). Even in her moment of crisis, she couldn't stop citing regulations. The scene was pure slapstick gold. Brenda running in increasingly frantic circles while my chicken army pursued her with military precision. The viral moment came when she zagged. Instead of zigged, time seemed to slow as Brenda's heel caught in a gopher hole. Her arms windmilled frantically, her mouth formed a perfect O of surprise, and she screamed, "No!" Oh, she looked like a demented scarecrow straw sticking out at all angles. Her face painted with substances best left undescribed. But Brenda wasn't done. "Oh no!" She had one more card to play. Spotting my horse Bronco tied near the water trough, her eyes lit up with what she probably thought was inspiration, but was actually desperation, mixed with delusion. "Ah, hey," she cried, struggling to her feet. "I'll show you how real ranch justice works." She staggered toward Bronco, who regarded her with the kind of equine skepticism reserved for people who clearly had no business being near horses. Her first attempt to mount him while wearing a tight designer dress was doomed from the start. She got one foot in the stirrup, hopped twice, and promptly fell backward. The second attempt wasn't much better. She managed to grab the saddle horn but couldn't quite swing her leg over instead, performing an awkward dance that looked like a failed audition for Tear to Soul Bronco. Bless his patient heart stood perfectly still occasionally, turning his head to look at her with what I swear was pity. The third attempt was the charm, if by charm you mean complete disaster. She actually got on the horse for exactly 2 seconds before sliding off the other side in a move that defied physics. She landed in the mud with a splat that was audible from 50 feet away. Lying there in the mud, covered in straw, chicken droppings, and shame, Brenda finally noticed the convoy of real police vehicles arriving. Not the friendly reunion attendees, but official units responding to multiple 911 calls about a deranged woman attacking a peaceful gathering. She struggled to her feet, mud dripping from every surface, and pointed a filthy finger at me. "You set me up!" she screamed, her voice cracking with rage and exhaustion. "This was all your plan! You knew this would happen!" I tipped my cowboy hat politely, giving her my best smile. "No, ma'am," I said calmly. "You did this all yourself, every single bit of it." 3 black SUVs with federal plates pulled up to my ranch, their arrival adding an official weight to what had already been the most chaotic day in Willowbrook Estates history. Brenda stood there, a mud-covered monument to hubris, watching as agents in blue windbreakers stepped out. The lead agent, a woman who looked like she ate chaos for breakfast and washed it down with criminal tears, approached with the measured steps of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. "Brenda Whitfield?" she asked, though it was clearly not a question. Even covered in mud and feathers, Brenda tried to summon her authority. "I am the president of the Willowbrook Estates Homeowners Association," she declared, as if that title was a magical shield against federal prosecution. "Perfect! Then you're exactly who we're looking for," the agent replied, pulling out handcuffs. "You're under arrest for embezzlement of HOA funds." The words hung in the air like a judge's gavel coming down. "No, I have immunity. I'm the president. You can't arrest me at my own community." Brenda's voice had reached a pitch that made nearby dogs whimper. Christopher stepped forward, and for the first time all day, he looked genuinely sad. 2 years, Brenda," he said quietly. "We've been watching you for 2 years. We know about every trip to Vegas, every dollar. stolen every fake receipt. It's over. The gathered crowd, which now included what seemed like half the neighborhood, plus my 50-plus law enforcement family members, watched in stunned silence. This wasn't just a local HOA drama anymore. This was a federal case. Brenda's empire wasn't just crumbling. It was being demolished with extreme prejudice, but I kept this neighborhood beautiful, she wailed, mascara running down her cheeks in black rivers. I maintained standards. I protected property values. It was pathetic and tragic in equal measure, watching someone cling to their delusions. Even as reality crashed down around them, I approached slowly, my boots squelching in the mud. 25 years of wearing a badge had taught me a lot about human nature, and what I saw in Brenda wasn't just a corrupt HOA president. It was something deeper and sadder. Brenda, I said, my voice carrying across the sudden quiet. In all my years in law enforcement, I learned something important. People don't destroy themselves because they hate others. They do it because they hate themselves. The question is, what made you hate yourself so much that you needed to control everyone else? Don't. You dare psychoanalyze me, Brenda shrieked, but her voice broke on the last word. You don't know anything about me, about what I've been through, about what I've lost. And there it was, the crack in the armor, the glimpse of the human being underneath. The tyrant. Madison pushed through the crowd, tears streaming down her face. Mom, please, she begged, her professional composure completely shattered. Just stop, accept help. It doesn't have to end like this. Brenda turned to her daughter, and for a moment the rage flickered out, replaced by something raw and broken. I have something to tell you, Madison continued, her voice barely above a whisper, but carrying in the silent crowd. I've been dating Tyler Morrison for 2 years. Hathan's son, I wanted to tell you so many times, but I knew you'd react like this, like everything was a personal attack on your authority. The revelation hit Brenda like a physical blow. She actually staggered, her mud-covered hands reaching out for something to steady herself. You've been with them for 2 years behind my back. The betrayal in her voice was palpable, but so was the pain. In that moment, something shifted. Brenda looked around at the assembled crowd. Neighbors she'd terrorized, police officers she'd insulted, her own daughter choosing love over loyalty to her mother's reign of terror. Her shoulders slumped, and for the first time in 8 years, Brenda Whitfield looked small. I didn't want to be alone again. She whispered so quietly that only those closest could hear. After Robert left, after he said I was nothing without him, the HOA was all I had. It was the only thing that made me feel important, in control, not worthless. Carlos stepped forward, his voice gentle despite everything that had happened. Mom, addiction is a disease. Whether it's gambling power or control, it's all the same sickness. You can get help, but first you have to admit you need it. The federal agent who'd been watching this drama unfold with professional detachment seemed to soften slightly. Mrs. Whitfield, cooperation will help your case significantly. Brenda looked at the handcuffs, then at her daughter, then at me. Finally, her gaze swept across the neighbors, many of whom, despite everything that had happened, were looking at her with something approaching sympathy. She raised her muddy hands, slowly, a gesture of surrender that carried the weight of 8 years of tyranny coming to an end. Okay, she said, her voice barely audible. I'll go. I'm tired. I'm so very tired of fighting everyone, of being angry all the time, of being alone. The agent nodded and gently placed the handcuffs on Brenda's wrists. As she was led toward the SUV, Madison ran forward. Mom, I'll be your lawyer, Pruno, but you have to promise me you'll get help. Real help. Brenda nodded, unable to speak through her tears. But just as she was about to get in the car, someone in the crowd yelled, Wait, look at this! They were holding up their phone, showing something that made everyone gasp. Madison grabbed the device, her eyes widening as she saw the screen. "Mom," she said, her voice shaking. "Your live stream just hit 5 million views. You're the #1 trending villain in America." Brenda's cuffed hands reached toward the phone. Trembling on the screen, the comments were brutal, celebrating her downfall, turning her meltdown into memes and mockery, but scattered among the hate were other comments. "She clearly needs help. I hope she gets therapy. Addiction is a disease." 5 million people. Brenda whispered the reality of her public humiliation sinking in. 5 million people watched me destroy myself. Madison gripped her mother's hands through the cuffs. "But Mum, 5 million people can also watch you rebuild yourself if you're brave enough to try. The internet, as they say, is forever." And Brenda Whitfield had just become its latest cautionary tale. News vans from every major network descended on Willowbrook estates like vultures to Carrion, their satellite dishes reaching skyward to broadcast the story of the HOA president who lost it all in the most spectacular way possible. The hashtags were brutal: Brenda Viz, Sheriff, Chicken Karen, and Home Meltdown. And my personal favorite Muddy Justice memes were born faster than my chickens could lay eggs. Brenda covered in mud, Brenda being chased by chickens, Brenda falling off Bronco. Someone had even set the chicken chase to Yacardi Sacks, and it had 10 million views in an hour. Standing in my ranch watching the media circus unfold, I felt a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Yes, Brenda had brought this on herself, but watching someone's complete destruction, even someone who'd made life hell for so many people, wasn't as satisfying as I had thought it would be. The reporters were interviewing neighbors, and the stories poured out like water from a broken dam. She fined me $500 for having a garden gnome she deemed tacky. One woman told CNN my daughter's lemonade stand got shut down for not having a vendor permit. Another said to Fox News 3 warnings about my wind chimes before she had them confiscated. An elderly man shared with NBC. But something interesting was happening. As the stories accumulated, painting a picture of 8 years of petty tyranny, some neighbors began showing a different perspective. Mrs. Henderson, my wonderful neighbor, told one reporter, "You know, she wasn't always like this. When she first became HOA president, she actually did good things. Organized community cleanups, started a neighborhood watch. It was only after her husband left that she became, well, this." Others nodded, remembering the Brenda from before, the one who brought cookies to new neighbors and organized charity drives. Madison had stayed behind after her mother was taken, away standing in my muddy ranch like a lost soul. She was scrolling through her phone, reading comments, her face a kaleidoscope of emotions. "They're calling her the most hated woman in America," she said quietly. "But look, some people are saying she needs help, not hate." She showed me her screen where between the cruel means and harsh judgments there were voices of compassion. Mental health advocates pointing out the signs of gambling addiction, people sharing their own stories of hitting rock bottom, others simply saying that nobody deserves to have their worst moment broadcast to millions. Christopher, or rather Special Agent Stevens, approached us. He'd shed his mild-mannered HOA vice president persona, entirely looking every inch the federal investigator he'd always been. "The investigation uncovered more than we initially thought," he said. Grimly, 2 other HOAs in neighboring communities, similar patterns of embezzlement, total stolen over $400,000 across 5 years. She was spiraling, using each new theft to cover gambling losses from the last classic addiction pattern. Madison winced at each revelation, but she stood strong, "How long will she be gone?" she asked. Christopher's expression softened slightly, with cooperation and restitution maybe 3 to 5 years, without it significantly longer. That's when Madison did something that shocked everyone watching. She turned to face the news cameras that were still rolling and spoke with the kind of conviction that could move mountains. "My mother is sick," she said, her voice clear and strong despite the tears. "She has a gambling addiction that destroyed her life and hurt our entire community. She stole, she bullied, and she abused her power. These are facts, and she must face the consequences, but she's also a human being who lost her way, and I'm going to make sure she finds it again. I'll be representing her pro bono with one condition. She enters treatment and pays back every single cent she stole." The gathered crowd fell silent. This wasn't the drama they'd come for. This was something deeper and more complex. "If you're watching this," Madison continued, looking directly into the nearest camera, "and you've ever hit rock bottom, you know that the only way up is to first admit you're at the bottom. My mother hit hers today in front of 5 million people, but with help, with accountability, and with hard work, she can climb back up, not to power, but to humanity." Madison's speech was going viral for entirely different reasons than her mother's meltdown. "Family is family" started trending, competing with the mockery. I put my hand on Madison's shoulder, feeling a surge of respect for this young woman who was choosing the hard path of compassion over the easy road of abandonment. "Your mother raised a good person," I told her, "even if she lost her own way." Madison smiled through her tears. "She used to be different, Nathan. Before the divorce, before the gambling, before all of this, I remember her teaching me about integrity, about standing up for what's right. I'm hoping that woman is still in there, somewhere under all the anger and fear." The community's response was mixed, but moving. Some neighbors, the ones who'd suffered the worst under Brenda's reign, weren't ready to forgive others, perhaps seeing their own struggles reflected in her fall, offered support. Mrs. Henderson started a collection for those who'd been unfairly fined, but she also suggested that once restitution was made, they could write letters of support for Brenda's sentencing. Accountability with compassion. She called it the HOA board, minus their president, and fake vice president, called an emergency meeting for that evening to figure out how to move forward. As the sun set on the most chaotic day in Willowbrook Estates history, I found myself standing with Carlos, surveying the damage to my ranch: overturned tables, scattered hay, muddy hoofprints, and enough viral video content to last a lifetime. "You know what the strangest part is?" I said to him. "I actually feel bad for her." Carlos nodded, understanding in his eyes. 20 years ago you arrested her for shoplifting, right? Let her go with a warning." I was surprised he knew about that. She probably doesn't even remember, but yeah, I did. Thought she just needed a break. Guess. Some people need more than just breaks, they need breakdowns. Brenda's final live stream moment had become the stuff of internet legend, but her daughter's response was becoming something else, a testament to the power of choosing love over abandonment, rehabilitation over revenge. As the news crews packed up and the neighbors drifted home, Madison turned to me with a strange expression. "She's going to want revenge when she gets out," she said. "On you, on the chickens, on everyone." I laughed, the first real laugh I'd had all day. "Let her come, but first, she's got to get past my chickens." Madison managed a small smile. "About those chickens, were they really trained?" "No," I admitted, "but after today I'm thinking about starting a side business, Morrison's Security Chickens. We protect and serve with feathers." Madison actually laughed, and in that moment I saw hope. Because if Brenda had raised a daughter who could find humor in the darkest moment, who could choose compassion over convenience, then maybe, just maybe, there was hope for Brenda too. She looked directly at the camera one. More time knowing this would be clipped and shared. Drop a heart emoji if you believe in second chances, she said, because everyone deserves a chance to become better than their worst day. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Hearts flooded the comments, drowning out the hate. Second chances started trending. And somewhere in a federal holding facility, Brenda Whitfield was about to learn that rock bottom could also be a foundation to build something better. She just had to be brave enough to start building. 6 months later, Willowbrook Estates was a different place entirely. The fall festival was in full swing at my ranch, with a banner stretched across the entrance that read, "Everyone welcome, no OA rules here," in letters so large you could probably see them from space. The irony wasn't lost on anyone that the community's biggest celebration was happening at the very place where Brenda Whitfield had met her spectacular downfall. But that was the thing about redemption. It often grew in the most unexpected soil. Speaking of unexpected, guess who was walking through my gate carrying a homemade pie? Brenda Whitfield looked nothing like the tyrant who'd terrorized our neighborhood for 8 years. Gone was the helmet of Botox perfection, replaced by natural grey streaks in her hair that actually made her look younger. She wore simple jeans and a flannel shirt instead of designer dresses, and most surprisingly, she was smiling. A real smile, not the forced strictest of superiority we'd all grown accustomed to. "Nathan," she called out, holding up the pie like a peace offering. "I brought humble pie. Literally, I made it myself in the halfway house kitchen." The joke was so unexpected, so self-aware, that I nearly dropped my barbecue tongs. She'd been in the rehabilitation program for 4 months, sober for 5, and working community service teaching financial literacy at the local community center. The therapy sessions had been brutal. At first, Brenda told me she'd spent the first 3 sessions just crying, unable to even speak about the void her ex-husband had left. But Dr. Martinez had been patient, guiding her through the layers of hurt that had calcified into tyranny. Ironically, she said, setting the pie on the table. I'm actually really good with numbers when I'm not feeding them into slot machines. Who knew the transformation was remarkable? This wasn't just someone going through the motions of court-ordered rehabilitation. This was genuine change. The community had watched her journey through her unlikely viral redemption documented on social media with the same fervor that had captured her downfall. Christopher Stevens, who had resigned from the FBI to become our legitimate HOA president, had implemented his first official rule: cancel every single ridiculous regulation Brenda had put in place. Property values hadn't plummeted, as Brenda had always warned. They'd increased by 40%. Turns out people really liked living in a neighborhood where they could paint their doors whatever color they wanted and have garden gnomes if they damn well pleased. Freedom sells, he told the board, and the numbers proved him right. The HOA was now run like an actual community organization, not a tiny dictatorship. Madison and Tyler's engagement had been announced last month, with the wedding planned for next spring. Right here at the ranch, Brenda was helping with the planning, and by helping, I mean actually helping, not controlling. When Madison showed her 3 different flower arrangements, the old Brenda would have immediately pointed to one and declared it perfect. The new Brenda studied them carefully, then said, "They're all beautiful, honey. Which one makes your heart sing?" Tyler's parents, who'd been warned about the infamous Brenda Whitfield, were shocked. "I suggested ivory tablecloths," she told me proudly. And when Madison said she preferred lavender, I said, "That sounds beautiful." Character, growth, Nathan. My therapist says I'm making progress. The fact that she could joke about her own control issues was perhaps the biggest sign of how far she'd come. She was even seeing a therapist specializing in gambling addiction and narcissistic personality disorder, attending meetings religiously. But the real shock came from Brenda's social media presence. Her account, Recovery Journal with Brenda, had 2 million followers watching her redemption journey. Her most popular video, a tutorial called How to Not Be a Brenda, where she broke down her own toxic behaviors with brutal honesty and humor. Step 1, she'd said in the video, stop weaponizing your clipboard. Seriously, it's just stationery, not Excalibur. Comment section, once a cesspool of hate, had transformed into a support group for others dealing with addiction control issues or just general life failures. The festival was in full swing now, with over 300 people enjoying the freedom to celebrate however they wanted. Kids were drawing chalk art on the sidewalks, previously a $50 fine per drawing. A dunk tank featured Christopher volunteering to be dunked for charity, and a pie-eating contest violated at least 3 former regulations about public food consumption. Brenda was actually judging the chalk art contest, awarding prizes for most creative rule, breaking with genuine delight. My chickens roamed freely among the guests, and several people took selfies with them. Con Sanders had his own social media following. Now, because of course he did. "Well, these chickens are legends," one teenager said. Posing for a picture, they took down a dictator, Brenda overheard, and laughed. Actually laughed. "Best thing that ever happened to me," she said. "Getting my ass kicked by poultry was exactly the wake-up call I needed." As the sun began to set, casting golden light over the ranch, Brenda found herself flipping burgers beside me at the grill. The symbolism wasn't lost on either of us. 6 months ago, she tried to destroy this exact spot. Now she was helping feed the community she'd once terrorized. "You know," she said, expertly, flipping a patty, "I prefer this life less stressful than being a dictator." I smiled, adding more sauce to the ribs, fewer clipboard injuries. She laughed again, a sound that still surprised. People who'd only known the old Brenda. Definitely. Plus my cortisol levels are way down. My doctor says I've added 10 years to my life just by learning to chill the hell out. The neighbors' response to her presence was fascinating to watch. Some kept their distance, still nursing wounds from years of arbitrary fines and petty tyrannies. Others, perhaps recognizing their own struggles in her journey, approached with cautious warmth. Mrs. Henderson, bless her heart, marched right up and handed Brenda a glass of lemonade. "Brenda, dear," she said, with a twinkle in her eye, "my grass is 2 in tall. What are you going to do about it?" Brenda grinned and replied, "Absolutely nothing, Mrs. H. In fact, let it grow to 3 in. I hear butterflies love that height." The old woman cackled and patted Brenda's cheek. "There's hope for you yet, child." As the evening wore on, Madison and Tyler announced the news everyone had been waiting for. Their first child was on the way. Brenda burst into happy tears, the kind of genuine emotion she never would have shown in her president days. "I'm going to be a grandmother," she exclaimed. Then quickly added, "And I promise I'll be the good kind. The fun kind, the kind who spoils the kid and doesn't have a clipboard within 50 FT of the nursery." The crowd laughed and applauded, and I saw several people wiping away tears. This wasn't just Brenda's redemption story anymore. It had become the community story of forgiveness and second chances. The final moment of the evening came when Brenda was asked to speak. She stood before the crowd. No podium, no PowerPoint, just a woman who'd learned some hard truths. "I spent 8 years trying to control all of you because I couldn't control myself." She began, her voice steady. "I turned this beautiful community into my personal kingdom because I was terrified of being powerless. But real power, I've learned, isn't about rules and fines and fear. It's about connection, compassion, and the courage to admit when you're wrong. I was wrong about everything. And I'm grateful, truly grateful that you've given me a chance to be right. The applause was genuine, if not universal. Some wounds take longer to heal than others. But as I looked around at my ranch, at the community gathering, in peace and joy, at former enemies sharing tables and stories, I felt something I hadn't expected: pride. Not in myself, but in all of us. We'd taken something broken, and instead of discarding it, we'd helped rebuild it. The final statistics were staggering. Brenda had repaid every cent of the $400,000 through a combination of asset liquidation and a payment plan. She taught anger management at the same facility where she'd received treatment. Her former HOA Tyrants Anonymous support group had chapters in 12 states. As the evening wound down and people began to leave, Brenda approached me one last time. "Nathan," she said quietly, "I owe you an apology, a real one, not because the court ordered it, but because you deserved better. Everyone did." I nodded, accepting the apology for what it was. "Genuine, we're good, Brenda. Just keep being this version of yourself." She smiled and added with a hint of her old spirit, "But I still think your chickens were trained. There's no way that was natural." I laughed, tipping my hat. A good sheriff never reveals his sources. The last shot of the evening was perfect for social media. Brenda taking a selfie with Colonel Sanders, both of them looking directly at the camera. Her caption, "From enemies, friends, thanks for knocking me off my high horse," or in this case, Golf Cart Redemption Ranch, second chances chicken wisdom. The post got 5 million likes, the same number who'd watched her downfall. But this time they were celebrating a rise, not a fall, and that made all the difference. As I watched the last car leave and the sun dip below the horizon, I thought about justice and mercy, about falls and redemptions. Sometimes the best thing you can do for someone is let them hit rock bottom, but the most human thing you can do is help them find their way back up, even if they once tried to find you for your chickens. Volume levels, especially then Brenda now, teaches a masterclass. Lesson 1, don't fight cowboys with badges or their chickens. Trust me on this one, the class is always full-packed, with former HOA board members, recovering control freaks, and anyone who's ever let power go to their head. And every single class ends the same way with Brenda's new life motto: when you stop trying to control everyone else, you finally learn to control yourself. Plus, chickens are surprisingly good therapists.